There comes a moment, often quiet, easily missed, when you realize you've been waiting for someone to tell you it's okay, that you're ready, that the path ahead belongs to you, the permission to try, to fail, to rise, to speak, to shine, but that someone never quite arrives, and perhaps they were never meant to. We grow up learning to seek green lights from the outside, from parents, teachers, systems, timelines. We learn to raise our hand, to wait our turn, to ask first. And while those lessons have their place, they begin to tangle with our spirit, until we start to believe that every bold step must first be sanctioned, approved, applauded, as if our own life were not already our own. Success, whatever that means to you, does not wait for credentials or committee votes. It blooms when you do. It begins not in the spotlight, but in the quiet decision to begin, to no longer wait for proof that you're enough, to no longer wait for the world to agree. This is not a battle cry. It's not a call to hustle or grind or break down every door. It's something softer, a remembering, a returning to the truth that your desires are sacred, that your dreams are not wild intrusions, but gentle invitations from the part of you that already knows the way. The truth is, you don't need permission to become yourself. There's a strange kind of power in no longer asking, not because you don't care what others think, but because you finally care enough to honor what you think. You start to see that every time you hesitate, waiting for someone to tell you yes, you hand away a little piece of your power. And it's not dramatic or loud. It's subtle, like erosion, like a voice going quiet from disuse. But here's the thing. You can call it back. You can walk yourself home. What if the only person who needed to believe in your next step was you? What if your permission slip was already signed, not by someone else, but by the version of you who's been waiting on the other side of fear? The version who has always known you could. We tend to imagine success as a finish line, a medal, a public moment. But more often, it's quiet. It's the morning you get up and try again. The afternoon you finally press send. The moment you say no or yes or I'm not sure yet, but you say it in your own voice. That is success, and you don't need to ask for it. There's a door many of us stand in front of for years, convinced it's locked. We jiggle the handle, we peek through the cracks, we wait for the key. We make peace with staying outside. But one day, maybe today, you place your hand on the wood and feel something different. Not resistance, but invitation. You press gently, and it opens. Not because it finally became unlocked, but because it never was. You are allowed to begin. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to change your mind, start over, dream bigger, or choose a different path. Not because someone says so, but because this is your life, your one wild, wondering life. There will still be noise, voices that say, "Who do you think you are?" Or, "Is this even allowed?" But you'll recognize those voices for what they are, echoes of a world that forgot how to trust itself. You'll hear them, but you won't obey, because now your inner voice speaks louder, not in volume, but in truth. You don't need to justify your steps to people who don't have to live with their consequences. You don't need to dim your light to make others comfortable. You don't need to prove your worth before you take your place. The truth is, you already belong. And the moment you believe that, the entire shape of your world begins to shift. Not all at once, not with fireworks, but like spring breaking through frost, quietly, steadily, inevitably. So this is not a guidebook. It's a remembering, a conversation, a gentle nudge back toward the self that already knows, the self that is tired of shrinking, the self that is done waiting, not out of arrogance but out of love, not out of defiance but out of clarity. You were never meant to ask. You were meant to trust, to move toward what makes your heart beat faster. to walk as if your life is yours, because it is. And maybe this isn't the first time you've heard this, but perhaps this is the first time it lands, because something inside you is ready. The door is still there, so is the key. And maybe now your hand reaches for the handle, not to knock, not to beg, but to walk through. You don't need permission to succeed, just the courage to listen inward and the willingness to answer. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Unlearning the rules. There are rules we follow without realizing. Unwritten ones, inherited, absorbed, whispered so early and often that they become part of our inner dialogue. Rules that tell us what success should look like, when it should happen, how it should feel, and who is allowed to claim it. Be realistic. Play it safe. Wait your turn. Don't be too loud, too ambitious, too different. Don't ask for too much. Don't dream too big. Work hard, then harder. Sacrifice now. Maybe you'll be happy later. These aren't rules written on paper. They're passed through tone, silence, glances. Sometimes they come from love, a parent trying to protect you, a teacher urging caution, a culture shaped by survival. But even when well-meant, they carry weight. They define the shape of the box you live in. They teach you the edges of acceptable and appropriate. They draw invisible lines between you and the life that could have been yours. And so many of us follow them. Not because we truly believe in them, but because we've never been shown another way. We get so good at being what we were taught we should be that we forget to ask, does this even feel right? But there comes a moment, a quiet fracture, when those rules start to chafe. When the version of success you were handed no longer fits. When you realize you've been walking a path that leads away from yourself. Not toward your joy, your truth, your wildness, but towards someone else's idea of achievement. And in that moment, the questioning begins. Where did these rules come from? Who wrote them? Who benefits when I obey them? And what would it mean to lay them down? Unlearning is not rebellion. It's remembering. It's sitting with the stories you were told and gently, courageously asking if they are still yours. It's choosing to believe that your life does not need to resemble anyone else's blueprint to be meaningful. You are not here to play a part in someone else's dream. You are here to write your own. Success doesn't have to look like constant motion. It doesn't need to be loud or public or lucrative. Maybe success for you is quiet mornings and work that feels kind. Maybe it's building something slowly, gently, with intention. Maybe it's walking away from the performance, the pressure, the shoulds, and moving towards something more honest, something more you. And yes, it's scary. Because when you unlearn the rules, you're also letting go of the safety they seem to offer, the illusion of certainty, the comfort of approval. But in their place, something real begins to grow. Self-trust, spaciousness, freedom. You are not selfish for choosing a different path. You are not wrong for wanting something more true. You are not irresponsible for asking whether the ladder you're climbing even leans against the right wall. You're not breaking rules. You're remembering freedom. The world needs fewer people trying to fit in, and more people brave enough to show up as they are, fully, unapologetically. Success is not a reward for obedience. It is a side effect of authenticity. When you stop trying to be what you're not, you free up all that energy to become what you are. That shift doesn't happen all at once. It's slow. It starts when you pause mid-thought and realize, wait, this isn't even my voice. When you look at the goal you've been chasing and whisper, do I actually want this? When you catch yourself hustling for approval and decide to return to alignment instead, you will be tempted to doubt yourself, to slip back into the old rules. That's okay. The process of unlearning is not linear. It's a spiral. You will come back to the same questions again and again. each time with more clarity, more courage, more softness. And as you do, a different kind of success begins to reveal itself, one that feels like peace, like purpose, like being able to breathe fully in your own skin. It won't always look impressive from the outside, but it will feel like coming home. You're not lost. You're in the middle of remembering. So take the rules you were given and lay them out before you. Examine them with tenderness. Which ones still serve you? Which ones feel tight, outdated, or false? Which ones were never yours to begin with? Then, choose again. Write new ones. Or better yet, release the need for rules at all. Trade them for values, for vision, for the inner compass that points not to approval, but to truth. And when the world around you wonders why you've changed, remind yourself, you were not made to live according to someone else's map. You were made to chart your own. This is not easy work. It is sacred work, the kind that ripples outward, because every time you choose to live freely, you give someone else silent permission to do the same. Every time you step outside the lines, you redraw the possibilities for someone watching. Your courage creates space. Your truth makes room. So here's to the gentle unlearning, to the brave questions, to the quiet moments of, maybe I was never wrong, just misled. Here's to rewriting the story, not with defiance, but with clarity, with love, with the steady hand of someone who finally understands. Freedom isn't granted, it's claimed. And you, just as you are worthy of it. Chapter 2. The Truth About Worthiness. You don't have to become someone else to be worthy of your life. You don't have to achieve more, shrink less, speak softer, smile more. You don't have to look a certain way, or earn a certain income, or gather a certain number of nods from the world to finally be enough. You were never unworthy. That was a lie you were taught by a world that profits from your doubt. The truth is, success is not a pass you receive once you've proven yourself. It's not a gold star handed out after you've suffered enough or shrunk yourself sufficiently to fit the mold. It's not something reserved for the chosen few, the loud, the bold, the perfectly polished. It is not earned through exhaustion. It is not delayed until you are perfect. You don't need to audition to exist fully. You don't need to qualify to bloom. Look outside. Does the tree beg for permission to grow toward the sky? Does the flower apologize for opening in the sun? Does the river explain itself before it flows? They simply are. And that is enough. You too are enough. But somewhere along the way, you were told a different story. That worthiness is transactional. That love, belonging, and success must be bought with perfection. That before you can rise, you must first fix everything about yourself. Clean yourself up. Be smaller. Be quieter. Be more palatable. It's a slow erosion of self-trust. 1,000 tiny moments of feeling like who you are is not quite right, not quite ready. You start to believe that success is something that happens after you become someone better, someone more disciplined, more beautiful, more articulate, more impressive. And so you hustle. You contort, you shapeshift, you spend your days performing the version of yourself you think the world wants. All the while, something inside you whispers, there has to be another way. There is. It begins with remembering that worthiness is not earned, it's inherent. It is not based on output. It's not negotiable. It's the quiet, constant truth underneath all the noise. The part of you that remains when the applause fades and the masks fall. You are not valuable because you succeed. You succeed because you remember your value. The moment you stop waiting to deserve it, things begin to shift. You start showing up differently. Not with arrogance, but with peace. Not with bravado, but with quiet knowing. You stop looking for mirrors to reflect your worth and start becoming your own. It's not easy to hold that truth in a world built on measurement. Everywhere you turn, there are metrics, followers, dollars, titles, trophies, external proof of value. And yet, the most grounded people often carry none of those things. What they carry instead is presence, conviction, an unshakable belief in their right to be here, to create, to lead, to speak, to rest, to try again. This is not about entitlement. It's about returning to what's always been true. That you, like every living thing, have value by nature of your being. That you don't have to be spectacular to be significant. That your voice, your story, your path, exactly as it is, matters. When you stop trying to be worthy, you start living free. You make bolder choices. You ask for what you need. You walk away from what drains you. You stop shrinking. You begin to take up space, not to dominate, but to exist with integrity. And that's the turning point. When your sense of worth no longer relies on validation, the world loses its power to manipulate you. You stop chasing approval and start choosing alignment. You begin to define success on your own terms, not based on comparison or competition, but on connection, creativity, contribution. It may not look like the version of success you were taught to seek, but it will feel like truth. It will feel like home. You are not here to prove your worth. You are here to express it. Let that truth settle. Let it unhook you from the myth of merit. Let it soften the voice that says, maybe one day, when I'm better, I'll try. Let it remind you that your timeline is your own and your pace is perfect. You don't need more credentials to be wise. You don't need 1 million followers to be impactful. You don't need permission to lead, to share, to build, to rise. The light you hold was never meant to be conditional. It was meant to be given simply because it's yours. There will be days when you forget, days when the old scripts return, whispering stories of scarcity and not enoughness. When they come, pause, breathe, touch the truth again. Say to yourself gently, I don't have to earn the right to be here. You are the tree reaching toward the sun, the mountain that doesn't flinch in the wind. You are worthy not because you do, but because you are. And that, always, is enough. Chapter 3. Becoming your own authority. There's a quiet moment in many lives, often unnoticed, when you pause before acting. Not because you don't know what to do, but because you wonder if you're allowed. You hesitate, not for lack of direction, but for lack of permission. As if someone somewhere must first approve of your path before you can begin walking it. We're taught early to wait. Wait to be picked. Wait to be seen. Wait for someone wiser, louder, older, more credentialed to nod before we move forward. And so we carry this invisible pause into adulthood. It slips into our decisions, soft and almost invisible. Should I speak up? Am I qualified? Can I really do this? It shows up in boardrooms, classrooms, living rooms, in dreams delayed and choices deferred. Not because the road wasn't clear, but because we didn't yet believe we were the ones allowed to walk it. But here's the truth. No one can give you the life that only you are meant to claim. There is no official letter that arrives saying, now you're ready. There's just you, your instincts, your knowing, your quiet courage. And at some point, you must decide that's enough. Becoming your own authority isn't about arrogance. It's about intimacy with your own inner voice. It's learning to listen deeply, not just to what the world wants from you, but to what your soul is whispering for. It's no longer outsourcing your choices to the loudest opinions in the room. Sometimes, trusting yourself sounds like a whisper. Start the project. Say no. Leave the room. Try again. It's not always grand or cinematic. Often it's a slow return, a quiet reclaiming, a single moment where you say, I may not know everything, but I know enough to begin. And you do. You've always had that inner compass, but years of doubt can muffle it. You learn to look outward instead of inward, to seek consensus before courage, And the more you do, the harder it becomes to hear yourself. Your truth gets buried beneath layers of advice, expectations, and well-meaning noise. But truth doesn't disappear. It waits. And eventually, something stirs. A nudge, a restlessness, a question. What if I don't need their blessing? What if I already have mine? That's the shift. It's subtle, but everything changes. You begin to walk from a different place. You trust your yes. You honor your no. You stop negotiating with your own voice. You realize that while advice can guide you, only you can decide for you. It won't always be comfortable. Self-led paths rarely are. There's no map, no blueprint, just your footsteps and faith. But comfort was never the point. Growth was, and freedom, and living in alignment with what you know to be true, even when others don't see it yet. You don't need to shout to be sure. You don't need to convince to be clear. You don't need to prove to be powerful. Real authority is quiet. It moves like still water, deep, calm, and steady. It doesn't panic when questioned. It doesn't beg to be believed. It simply is, rooted not in volume but in truth. And that kind of presence changes rooms, not because it demands attention, but because it carries conviction. It's not puffed up with certainty, but grounded in listening, deep listening, the kind that hears beneath fear, beneath doubt, to the quiet place where clarity lives. There are stories, countless ones, of people who walked without permission and built what didn't yet exist. They didn't wait to be invited. They made space. They didn't demand a spotlight. They lit their own lamp and tended it faithfully. Writers who shared words before they were ready. Creators who followed vision before applause. Leaders who led with service instead of show. Not all of them were loud. Many were quiet. But their clarity rang louder than any performance. Because when you lead from within, the world feels it, even if it takes time to catch up. And so, the invitation is simple, though never easy. Become the one you've been waiting for. The mentor, the guide, the green light. Give yourself the permission you keep seeking. Not recklessly, but intentionally. Not impulsively, but authentically. Let your choices be conversations with your own soul. Let your next step come from trust, not consensus. Let your voice be the first one you consult, not the last. You don't need more credentials to trust your path. You need presence, honesty, and a willingness to choose alignment over approval. When the voices get loud, because they will, don't try to shout over them. Go deeper. Return to your breath, your body, your knowing. Listen past the noise, not upward, but inward. Because the truth you're searching for out there, you've had it all along. And now, you get to live like that's true. You don't need louder opinions. You need deeper listening. And when you listen long enough, you'll hear it again. That quiet voice inside, the one that never left, only waited. And it will say, not with urgency, but with peace. This way. Keep going. You're ready. Chapter 4. Redefining success on your terms. At some point, you have to stop asking what success is supposed to look like, and start asking what it's meant to feel like. Because we're handed blueprints from the beginning. Pictures, formulas, milestones, degrees, promotions, milestones by 30, accolades by 40, a life that looks polished enough to quiet the questions in others. But something always feels off. Even when you're doing it all right, checking the boxes, reaching the marks, there's still that quiet ache. The sense that maybe, just maybe, this isn't it. Because somewhere along the line, success stopped being about you. It became a performance, a comparison, a finish line you never actually get to cross. Because every time you arrive, someone moves the goalposts. But what if success isn't a trophy at the end of the road? What if it's how you walk the road itself? What if it's peace in the morning instead of pressure, meaning instead of measurement, time spent with what and who matters instead of chasing what doesn't? Imagine that. A life where you wake up and the first question isn't, am I ahead, but am I aligned? The truth is, we all carry borrowed definitions, not because we're unwise, but because we're human. We inherit stories about what matters, what counts, what's worthy of applause. We internalize them before we even know we're doing it. But there comes a moment, sometimes through burnout, sometimes through heartbreak, sometimes in stillness, when we start to ask, whose story is this? And that's where freedom begins. Letting go of comparison isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily practice. It's choosing not to measure your life with someone else's ruler, not because their path is wrong, but because it's not yours. Your timeline is yours. Your pace is yours. Your version of enough gets to be shaped by your values, not the volume of the crowd. Some days, redefining success means doing less. Other days, it means showing up more honestly. Sometimes it's reaching a goal you set on your own terms. Other times, it's letting go of the goal entirely because you've outgrown it. That's not quitting. That's clarity. Think of success not as a race, but as a garden. You plant, you water, you tend. You learn what grows in your soil and what doesn't. Some seasons bloom wildly. Others are slow, quiet, and no two gardens look the same. The tomatoes don't envy the roses. The lavender doesn't rush to bloom because the daisies did first. Everything unfolds in its own rhythm, its own time. And that is beautiful. That is success. But you must choose to see it that way. The world will try to tell you otherwise. It will reward speed, visibility, noise. It will hand out praise for constant output, even if it costs you your well-being. But you don't have to play that game. You don't have to trade your soul for applause. You don't have to chase validation that doesn't nourish you. You can choose a quieter kind of success, one rooted in presence, integrity, wholeness, the kind of success where your values are intact, your relationships are tended, your body is honored, your mind is not at war with itself. The kind where joy is allowed, even in small things. You get to define it and redefine it as many times as it takes. There is no failure in shifting course. There is only honesty. And that is a kind of strength the world doesn't always recognize, but your soul will. Maybe success is cooking dinner while music plays and your phone is in another room. Maybe it's building something from nothing, not because it will go viral, but because it's yours. Maybe it's finally resting, not because you've earned it, but because you're allowed, always have been. We forget how deeply we're wired for timelines, for comparison, for competition disguised as inspiration. But success, real, sustainable success, asks something different. It asks that you know yourself, that you stop performing and start living. There will always be people louder, faster, shinier. Let them be. Let them run their race. You are not behind. You are not less. You are not late. You are exactly where you are supposed to be. And when you remember that, the anxiety softens. The fog lifts, and you can begin to ask more meaningful questions. What makes me come alive? What does peace look like in my life? What am I willing to release so I can feel free? The answers won't come all at once, but even asking them begins to unwrite the old scripts. And that is sacred work. It takes courage to walk away from metrics that made you feel small. It takes strength to choose depth over display. It takes faith to believe that your way, while quieter, is just as worthy. And it is. So here's the gentle reminder. You are allowed to bloom slowly. You are allowed to succeed differently. You are allowed to want what you want, even if no one else understands it. Especially then. Let your life be a garden, not a race. Let it grow wild in places. Let it surprise you. Tend it with love. Trust its rhythm. Know that some seasons will feel like stillness, and some will erupt in color, and both are part of the becoming. You don't need to win to be whole, you just need to be true. Chapter 5. Moving through resistance and doubt. You say you want to grow, to rise, to become, and then resistance, doubt. That old familiar ache just beneath the ribs. You were ready to begin, but suddenly you're tired. Suddenly you're unsure. Suddenly everything feels fragile and exposed. This is not failure, this is the threshold. Every brave decision meets resistance. Every bold beginning wakes the voice of doubt. Not because you are wrong to try, but because you are finally stepping outside the walls that kept you safe. And safe doesn't mean fulfilled. It only means familiar. So of course it's scary. Of course fear comes knocking the moment you start to shine. You are no longer hidden, no longer shrinking. And in that visibility comes risk. The risk of being seen, being judged, being misunderstood. The mind says, what if they don't get it? What if they don't get you? And you pause. But pause doesn't mean stop. Fear doesn't mean turn back. Doubt doesn't mean you're not capable. It only means you're human, and that something important is happening. You are stretching. It's easy to believe resistance is a red light, a sign that something is wrong. But more often, it's a signal that something new is being born, that old stories are cracking, that comfort is loosening its grip. And with that discomfort comes the urge to retreat, to delay, to wait until it all feels safer. But what if this is the moment to move forward, not pull back? You don't have to be fearless to begin. You just have to be willing. Even trembling steps are sacred. Even uncertain action matters. You don't have to know how it will end. You only have to honor what's calling you now. Let resistance speak, but do not let it steer. Let doubt whisper, but do not give it your voice. Let fear visit, but do not make it your home. You are allowed to bloom, even if others aren't ready. Not everyone will understand your path. Not everyone needs to. Some will project. Some will question. Some will shrink when you expand. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because your becoming reminds them of their own waiting. That is not your burden. You are not here to earn permission. You are not here to silence your light so no one else feels shadowed. You are here to become, fully, gently, fiercely, and you do not need to apologize for that. So what helps when the doubt is loud? You breathe. You come back to the body. You remember that fear is often just energy with nowhere to go. You move it. Walk, stretch, shake, speak, create. Let it leave your system like steam escaping pressure. It doesn't have to stay stuck. You anchor yourself in truth, your truth. You remind yourself of why you started, of what's at stake if you don't try, of how far you've already come, despite the noise, despite the fear, despite everything that tried to hold you back. You name the voice inside. You say, "Ah, there you are again, doubt." You don't fight it. You don't pretend it's not there. But you also don't mistake it for the full truth. It is only one voice, and your soul is louder when you choose to listen. You give yourself what you need. Sometimes that's rest. Sometimes that's a friend who sees the version of you you're still learning to believe in. Sometimes it's stillness. Sometimes it's action. You don't power through with force. You walk through with care. Because resistance isn't weakness. It's part of the process. It shows up for everyone who dares to grow. You think the confident ones didn't feel it? They did. They just learned to keep going anyway. Not recklessly, not without fear, but with softness, with grace, with the quiet knowing that worth doesn't come from certainty. It comes from the willingness to meet the unknown with open hands. You're not meant to have it all figured out. You're meant to show up, to be in the practice of becoming, to try again and again and again, even when the voice says, "Why bother?" You bother because it matters, because you matter. Let yourself be seen, not perfectly, not without fear, but fully. Let your truth exist in the light. Let your becoming take up space. And if someone doesn't understand it, that's okay. Their readiness is not your responsibility. Your job is not to shrink until no one feels discomfort. Your job is not to wait until every voice says go. Your job is to honor your own yes. So when the next wave of doubt rises, and it will, remember this. It's not here to break you. It's here to show you where you still need kindness. It's here to offer you the chance to respond differently, to stay, to breathe, to choose, to trust. You don't need to fight resistance. You need to meet it with presence. You don't need to silence doubt. You need to root deeper than it can reach. You don't need everyone's permission. You need your own. And you have it now. Chapter 6. Taking Aligned Action. You don't need the perfect plan to begin. You don't need unanimous support, a flawless script, or a future-proof map. You need only this, a quiet moment of truth, and the courage to move in its direction. Aligned action rarely arrives with trumpets. It's not about grand gestures, impressive launches, or viral success. It's softer than that. It's the small yes you whisper to yourself before the world catches on. It's the step that makes no noise, but shifts everything within. You've been taught to wait, for the right time, for permission, for certainty. But life doesn't reward delay. It responds to movement. Not frantic motion, not hustle disguised as worth, but action rooted in alignment, gentle discipline, the kind that comes from clarity, not pressure. It's easy to stay in thought, easy to overthink, over-explain, and override the signals of your own body. You could map it out 100 different ways and still feel unsure, because the mind wants guarantees. The heart offers only presence. So here's the real question. What does aligned action feel like? It doesn't always feel easy, but it feels true. Like exhaling after holding your breath. Like saying something out loud that you've carried too long in silence. It often arrives with a mix of peace and nerves, a sacred tension, a quiet trembling that says, "This matters. Do it anyway." And here's the gift. You don't have to get it right. You don't have to stick the landing. You just have to take the step that's yours to take today. Not the one that looks best to others. Not the one that makes the most noise. The one that feels like movement, not performance. Aligned action feels honest in the body. Sometimes it's a flutter in your chest, a pull in your gut, a warmth in your hands. Sometimes it's stillness, not urgency. A quiet nudge instead of a shout. You can't always explain it. You're not supposed to. That's the mind's job. And this isn't the mind's domain. You know the feeling. You've felt it before. When something felt right even if it wasn't popular. When you said yes to a path others couldn't see yet. When you chose to follow an instinct that didn't come with applause, but came with peace. That's your compass. That's alignment. And that's how you move. Imperfectly, but alive. No more waiting for the fear to go away. No more stalling until every detail is airtight. No more asking people who don't understand your path to validate your direction. Start where you are. Use what you have. Begin gently. Maybe it's a conversation you've been avoiding, a piece you've been meaning to write, a decision you keep circling. Maybe it's finally choosing rest because your worth no longer depends on output. Maybe it's daring to try again. This isn't about dramatic leaps. It's about honest steps, taken daily, taken gently, taken even when doubt still lingers around the edges. You don't need to be free of fear to move. You just need to move in a way that doesn't betray your truth. Think of small rivers. They do not shout. They do not hurry. But over time, they shape canyons. That's what your small, consistent steps do. They change you. They shape your path, not by force, but by persistence. And still, you'll question it. You'll wonder if it's working. You'll want to retreat. That's natural. Keep moving anyway. Because aligned action isn't measured in outcome. It's measured in integrity. In whether or not you showed up for what mattered. In whether your life feels like it belongs to you, not to the timelines, expectations, or metrics of someone else's design. Let yourself be messy. Let yourself be unfinished. Let yourself be seen mid-process. You're not here to impress. You're here to become. Each step you take, each moment you honor the truth of where you are. This is how you shift. This is how you build trust with yourself again. This is how you remember who you are beneath all the noise. You are the sculptor. You are the clay. Your action is not a performance. It's a practice. So move. Even if your hands tremble, even if your voice shakes, even if the outcome is still unclear. Move from truth. Move from care. Move because your becoming depends on it. And remember, small rivers, steady flow. Over time, they shape the world. Chapter 7. Staying True Without Apology. There comes a time when you stop asking if your truth is too much. You stop checking the mirror of other people's comfort to see if you still fit. You stop editing your essence to suit their taste. Not out of rebellion, but remembrance. A return to the original shape of your being. Staying true isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. It's not defiance or drama. It's quiet alignment. The kind that sits at your core like a still flame, unshaken by approval, uninterested in applause. It starts with soft boundaries, not walls, not fences, just a firm and gentle knowing of what protects your values, your vision, and your voice. It's the art of saying, "This is mine to hold," and meaning it. It's the strength to remain rooted, even when others want you to bend for their comfort. You're not here to convince them. You're here to be honest with yourself. Sometimes that honesty makes you quieter in rooms where you used to try so hard to be liked. Sometimes it makes you speak more clearly, even if your voice doesn't please everyone. Sometimes it simply means you walk away from what once felt like home, because it asked you to shrink, and you're done shrinking. There's a quiet strength in choosing yourself again and again, not as a reaction, but as a rhythm. You learn to live in a way that honors your own heartbeat, not the noise around you, not the rules they wrote, just your own breath, your own light. You start to speak and create without apology. You stop adding disclaimers to your joy. You stop explaining your preferences like they're mistakes. You realize your clarity is not arrogance. Your boundaries are not cruelty. Your presence is not a burden. This is what freedom feels like, the absence of performance. And it's not easy. You'll be tempted to soften your edges to make others more comfortable. You'll be asked to tone it down, fit in, make sense to people who never did the work to understand you. But your soul is not here to make sense. It's here to be sincere. You will lose people, but you will find yourself. And with time, you'll find others who don't just tolerate your truth. They meet you there. No masks, no edits, just mutual permission to be real. This is your homecoming. When you choose to walk your own way, you begin to notice the quiet power of those who do the same. They don't raise their voices. They don't dominate the room. But something about their presence says, "I am at peace with who I am. I don't need your permission to be here." That is the energy you cultivate, not force, but certainty. You protect your time, your energy, your sacred no. You choose what you allow in, not out of fear, but because your peace is not up for negotiation. You stop saying yes when you mean maybe. You stop apologizing for needing space. You stop hiding your joy just because others are uncomfortable with it. You learn to disappoint the right people, and in doing so, you stop disappointing yourself. It takes courage to walk this way, to leave behind the safety of being liked, to accept that not everyone will understand you, to stand in your truth even when it's inconvenient. But it's worth it, because it's real. You were not born to be approved. You were born to be true. And your truth doesn't owe the world a performance. It only asks you to be present, to honor your rhythm, to live like you mean it. So you begin. You let your voice shake. You let your boundaries wobble. You get it wrong, then right, then wrong again. But you keep choosing you. You keep practicing truth. You keep showing up, not to be perfect, but to be real. And with each step, the ground beneath you steadies. The people who matter draw near, and the rest fades, as it always does. This is not rebellion. This is return to the you before the edits, the you before the apology, the you that knows who you are without needing anyone else to agree. Keep going. You are the permission. You've come this far, through the whispers of doubt, the shadows of hesitation, the invisible scripts that try to hold you back. This journey you've taken, unlearning what you thought you knew about success, worthiness, permission, is not a race to a finish line. It is a quiet liberation, a steady unfolding of your own truth, at your own pace. You realize now that there was never a need to ask for permission, because permission was never a gatekeeper. It was always a story, one that someone else wrote for you. You may have lived that story for years, following its rules, carrying its burdens, hoping it would somehow fit you better. But the moment you step outside it, you begin to see how wide the world really is. You begin to breathe differently. There is no final destination here, no grand moment when you can say, I have arrived. Instead, there is the slow, unfolding dance of becoming, sometimes a tentative step, sometimes a bold leap. The quiet courage of showing up, again and again, imperfectly and fully. It's a rhythm you make your own. You learn to trust that your worth does not depend on others' applause. You don't need a title, a nod, a gold star to know you are enough. Your value is inherent, like the morning sun that rises without asking permission to light the earth. You are here by right, by existence, by the simple fact that you are. And with that understanding, you become the open gate, not the waiting line. You are no longer waiting for someone else to say yes, to give you a pass, to allow you entry into a space that belongs to you as much as anyone else. You stand wide open, inviting your own voice, your own dreams, your own unique way of being into the world. This openness is strength, not vulnerability. It is peace, not passivity. It is an embrace of your whole self, the light and the shadow, the sure and the uncertain, the quiet and the bold. You become a beacon for others who have felt unseen, unheard, or unworthy. By living your truth without apology, you create space for them to do the same. Your journey of quiet liberation becomes a silent invitation, a gentle permission slip for anyone ready to remember their own freedom. And so it continues. The road winds and bends, sometimes smooth, sometimes rocky. You fall, you rise, you rest, you keep moving. Not because you must, but because you choose to. Because deep inside, you know that you are the author of your story, the keeper of your light, the one who holds the key. You don't need permission to succeed, to be happy, to live fully. You just need to claim it, here, now, within yourself. So carry this with you as you go. Your worth is already whole. Your voice is already powerful. Your life is already enough. And the gate you stand behind is open wide. Welcome in.